Chapter 19, The Way Home. Baby, sit down, you're making me dizzy. In America, at the famous Heart Disease Research Center, outside the operating room, a young couple was anxiously waiting in the hallway. Don't worry, this Mr. Smith introduced the right person. In the corner, an old man spoke up to comfort her, but the slightly white fingers holding the cane revealed that the owner was not calm inside. Dad. Such a young doctor, I'm afraid. As soon as the old man spoke, the young woman immediately told him her inner worries. At this time, the red light of the operating room went out, the old man and the young couple quickly stood up, ran over, and waited at the door of the operating room. The woman even raised her hands in front of her chest up and down, left and right, forming a cross, praying to God reverently. The door was pushed open, a silver-white head of an old man with a fierce gaze, wearing surgical clothes and smiling, walked out. The patient lying on the hospital bed was pushed out from the operating room by the nurse. How is it, old friend? The old man's two hands tightly pulled Professor Smith. He saw that the main surgeon was so young, but he was still assured. The reason was that the old friend would be on the side paying attention to the whole process. The surgery was extremely successful. This is the student who makes me proud. Professor Smith glared, but he said with a contradictory smile. The young couple beside him suddenly let out a sigh of relief, overjoyed. Really, Uncle Smith? Afraid that he had heard wrong. Of course. If someone normally questioned his precious student like this, Mr. Smith would have jumped up long ago, but because he was his old friend's child, knowing how much spirit they had lost because of their child's congenital heart disease, he stopped. Waving his hand, go see that child. The old man watched his son and daughter-in-law leave in a hurry, looking at his old friend with guilt. Smith, can I see that little student? Sure enough, mentioning that chief surgeon, Mr. Smith immediately laughed out loud. The little girl will come out soon. After speaking, he took his good friend to the side, talking about his student's great achievements. After washing, Durua changed out of the bloody surgical gown, took off her mask and cap, and washed herself at the sink. She leaned her two hands on the sink, looking at herself in the mirror. After the baptism of 5 months, the person in the mirror had completely abandoned the naivety of 5 years ago. Her hair was tied high at the nape of her neck, revealing her entire face. Her skin was fair and rosy, her lips were fresh, her nose was straight, her eyes were clear and slightly narrow. She was indeed 100% beautiful, but there were countless beauties in the world. And there were definitely many more beautiful women than the girl in the mirror. Compared to her appearance, what attracted more attention was the noble aura that radiated from her bones. Her elegant temperament and appearance did not match. At this moment, because of the belief in her heart, she was a bit more determined. She remembered that 2 years ago, Qi Shen had just been transferred to the Special Forces for a year. Because of his mission, he had another bullet wound on his body. At that time, she was filled with panic. Only then did she realize that Father Qi's words were not simply comfort, but rather expectations for her. From that moment on, she devoted herself to researching the increasing difficulty of surgical operations. Looking at herself in the mirror, the depths of her eyes were filled with determination, stretching out her slender fingers to tightly grasp. From now on, everything must be in her palm, as long as she did not agree. No one should think about taking anything from her, no matter what. She went out of the operating room and was pulled in front of his friend by Professor Smith. Professor, she helplessly looked at the old man in front of her who was so smug that her eyelashes trembled, and Professor Smith rubbed his hands together, looking solemnly at his beloved student. Staying in America, you will have a better chance to develop. Smith meticulously observed her. Her surgical operations were becoming more and more precise. Moreover, she knew Chinese medicine. This child just needed time to let everyone know her extraordinary side. Mr. Smith felt that she should stay in America, stay at Loma Linda University. Smith firmly believed that if she had nothing else in mind and focused on medicine, her future would certainly be limitless. Professor Smith quietly looked at Durua, until she smiled guiltily and shook her head. He sighed, not disappointed. After all, he hadn't been rejected once or twice. On the flight from America to China. The flight attendants walked around the passengers, their eyes couldn't help but glance at the three little darlings, the adorable little elves, very elegant and gentle, truly very delicate. "Mom, aren't we going to America in the future?" The only little girl among the three little ones, her small face was 6 parts similar to her mother's, she asked doubtfully. "Of course. We can live with Daddy in the future." The expression on the eldest boy's face said, "I know," but when his little friends didn't pay attention, he looked a bit tired. Another little boy was holding a small book, raised his head and glanced at the little boy. "No, when we grow up, we can come here." "Really? Mom?" Chi-Hao hurriedly looked at his mother. As long as it was his mother who said it, it was right. Durua bent down and kissed Chi-Hao's small face. "Of course, when you grow up, you can take a plane by yourself." Chi-Hao received a positive answer, and his mother kissed him. He couldn't help but smile and squint his eyes, turning his small body around. His small hand was holding the glass of juice that the beautiful flight attendant had just poured, obediently drinking. "Mom, I want to kiss too." Seeing her brother being kissed by her mother, Chiyu stretched out her little hand to shake Durua's sleeve. After Durua finished kissing her precious daughter, she lowered her head to look to the left, and sure enough, Chi Xian was blinking his beautiful eyes at her. Her heart couldn't help but soften. She took out the little book in her child's hand, lovingly kissed his cheek. "Don't read any more, try to sleep, we're going home." Turning her head, she said to the other 2 children who couldn't stay silent like before, "Sleep well. When you wake up, you'll be able to see your great-grandfather and grandma very soon." As soon as she finished speaking, little classmate Chi-Hao immediately sat down, closed his eyes, and kept muttering, "Mom, I'm sleeping." "That's strange." Chi-Yu turned around, mercilessly exposing him, but was afraid that her mother wouldn't know that she was really obedient. "I'm sleeping too." "I'm sleeping too." Okay, Chi Xian also learned from his older brother and sister. The surrounding passengers were all amused by the way the 3 little guys talked. When they were distracted, the sound of everyone talking was also much quieter, afraid of disturbing the sleep of those little guys. Durua narrowed her eyes, helplessly looking at the 3 little guys who were becoming more and more mischievous. She laughed and shook her head. The bottom of her eyes could not hide the gentleness and love. She leaned her body against the chair, also closed her eyes to rest. "Shangjing, Chi family. Hurry up, Aunt Li, hurry up and prepare breakfast." Old Master Chi kept urging Aunt Li, who was busy in the kitchen. "Oh," Aunt Li's face happily replied, knowing that he was in a hurry. Father Chi and Mother Chi also came down from upstairs. "Dad, don't be in such a hurry, the children will arrive at 9 o'clock. Early in the morning, he heard his voice downstairs, just got out of bed and forced. Father Chi put on an expression as calm as a mountain. "I'm much calmer than Father." Mother Chi glanced at her husband, couldn't help but cough lightly to cover up the smile on her lips, not knowing who it was. Last night he tossed and turned in bed and couldn't sleep, almost morning. He was really tired before he started to sleep. Father Chi saw through Mother Chi's smile, and looked away awkwardly. Mother Chi didn't tease her husband, and quickly went into the kitchen to see if she could help with anything. Regardless of the outside, both father and son were anxious. They hadn't seen each other for more than a month, and she missed her little darlings. She had retired 2 years ago, and last year she followed Father Chi's military assignment back to Shangjing. Her son was in the military training area and couldn't leave at will, but he was in the suburbs of Shangjing. In short, the family could reunite. Flying into the border of Shangjing, the 3 children who had slept enough started to struggle again. Chi-Yu and Chi-Hao's 2 small hands grabbed onto the small window, their faces still tightly pressed against it. In the middle of the 2 children, they still did not forget to save a position for their younger brother. It was really difficult for them, wanting to divide the small window on the plane equally among the 3 small faces. "Mom, when I grow up, can I fly in the clouds?" No matter how many times she took the plane, the little girl Chi-Yu was always especially stubborn about this problem of flying in the clouds. After a group of Chi family men found out, they continued to proudly say that the Chi family's daughter was a reserve air force. Without waiting for Durua to reply, suddenly, the radio on the plane rang. "Attention passengers, there is a passenger on our flight who suddenly had a heart attack and needs emergency treatment. May I ask if there is a doctor on the flight?" In the cabin, the emergency radio searching for a doctor rang repeatedly, and the flight attendant also went to the surrounding passenger seats to ask if there was a doctor. It turned out to be an old man with a heart attack. Duruwa didn't have time to think too much. She grabbed her bag, and after hearing the announcement on the radio, she said to her 3 precious little ones who were sitting obediently in their seats, "Can you wait for mommy here?" Yes, they all nodded in unison. Chihao loudly assured his mother, "I will take good care of my little sister and brother." Finally, worried that his mother wouldn't believe him, he patted his little fleshy chest. The flight attendant seemed to see the situation on her side, and hurriedly walked forward. "Please rest assured, I will take good care of them." A sincere smile appeared. The surrounding passengers also rushed forward, showing that they would try to help the 3 little ones. Duruwa gratefully smiled at them, patted the 3 little heads, and followed a flight attendant to the patient's cabin. As soon as she arrived, Duruwa only saw the doctor on the same flight standing in front of an old man, his hands and feet flustered, and an old lady on the side constantly murmuring. The surrounding passengers' faces were also very worried. The flight attendant quickly led Duruwa over. "Dr. Wang, this young lady is a doctor." The doctor also saw Duruwa enter, looking very young, but her demeanor was also very leisurely. This doctor was someone who traveled all over the world all day, had a lot of knowledge, and did not underestimate other people's abilities just because they looked young. Dr. Wang handed the old lady's medical record from before to Duruwa. "He has heart disease. On the plane only prepared simple medical equipment. We have performed simple emergency treatment, but there is no improvement." Simply nodded to the other party. Duruwa did not accept the medical record. She walked towards the old man. At this time the old man's face was strangely pale, both hands covered his chest, his breathing was also not smooth, revealing a painful expression. The initial conclusion was that the heart disease had relapsed. Reported to the command center. They will notify the ground center to request a landing, then notify the airport center of the landing location, to prepare an ambulance and doctor. The serious voice of the flight attendant came from the intercom. The flight attendant holding the mic wanted to announce again, to calm everyone down, but was stopped by Dr. Wang beside her. She followed Dr. Wang's gaze, and saw that the young female doctor was attentively performing emergency treatment on the old man. In a short period of time, everyone held their breath and waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, gradually, the old man's painful expression relaxed a bit, his breathing also slowed down, everyone seemed to have won a battle, their faces filled with happy smiles. "It's just the first aid. As soon as we get off the plane, we'll immediately send him to the hospital for observation." Duruwa also breathed a sigh of relief, finally revealing a smile. "Of course." At this moment, the announcement sounded, everyone focused their attention. "Dear passengers, due to special reasons, we are about to land now. First go to Shangjing Airport, please prepare yourself." A few minutes later, the emergency flight landed at the airport. As soon as the plane landed, the rescue workers immediately took the stretcher and ran onto the plane, bringing the old man down from the plane. Duruwa followed the flight attendant to where the 3 little ones were preparing to get off the plane. "Miss, please wait a moment." A pleasant voice carrying a hint of worry came from behind. Duruwa turned around and saw, "Sorry, because the situation has changed temporarily, we still cannot send the patient to the hospital. I hope you can go to the emergency room to see the patient, to prevent any unexpected events." Finally finding Duruwa, the flight attendant sincerely requested her. Duruwa frowned. "Still not sent to the hospital? Let's go." Sending Buddha must be sent to the west. Arriving at the airport medical room, Duruwa only saw a group of rescue workers standing. "Hello, the patient seems unstable." Dr. Wang saw Duruwa, quickly went to greet him, secretly wondering in his heart, what's going on? Why hasn't the patient been sent to the hospital yet? Duruwa patted the children's heads, signaling them to be good. She stepped forward and saw that it was indeed unstable. Just now it was only the first aid, this old man had to be sent to the hospital. Seemingly seeing her frowning more and more, the person beside her who seemed to be the airport leader stepped forward to explain. It was his son who heard that the first stage was stable, and asked me to personally bring the rescue workers to pick up the old man and take him to the hospital. He hesitated for a moment. Doctor, is the situation not good? Durua glanced at him, her hand towards the bun on her head. In just a moment everyone was stunned, looking at her hair, then at the sewing needle in her hand, feeling extremely mysterious. As if she didn't hear, Durua took out a few sewing needles. Is there alcohol? The rescuer heard her words, and quickly took 75% medical alcohol from the table beside her and gave it to her. Sterilizing the needle, she then steadily inserted the needle into the old man's chest, leaving half of the needle's tail outside. Then she quickly took another needle, and used the same technique to insert it into another acupoint on the old man's body. After a while, the pain on the old man's face disappeared quite a bit. It's only a little effective, so we should rush the ambulance over. This. She looked at the needle on the old man's body. Acupuncture could only make his condition better. After they get here, just take it down. At this time, the people around were already shocked by her skillful technique. Hearing her words, everyone recovered their spirits. At this time, a leader walked in front of her, glanced at the sewing needle, and seriously said to her, "Miss, you cannot bring these items on the plane." After speaking, she felt a little embarrassed. It sounded like she was going to throw them away after using them. It didn't matter at all. The other person wasn't angry at all. On the contrary, she smiled and said, "I explained it as jewelry in America." She had gotten used to carrying a set of sewing needles with her. The security check in America was really strict. Even if Durua used it as a hairpin, she still had to go through Professor Smith's greeting first, then make a guarantee, then barely passed. However, others didn't know. They thought that she really passed the security check like that. Silence. Everyone was obviously frightened by this powerful reason. Dr. Wang suddenly burst into laughter, admiringly saying, "So amazing." It was unknown whether he was referring to Durua's technique of hiding the needle or her medical skills.